Hi, I'm Dr. Penny Reed. I'm an independent consultant in the area of special education and assistive technology. I'm here today to talk to you about the quality indicators for administrative support. The administrative support area really defines the critical areas of administrative support and leadership for developing and delivering assistive technology services. It includes the development of policies and procedures and other supports that are necessary to improve AT services and to sustain really effective assistive technology programs. Let's look at them. There are 7 quality indicators for administrative support. The first reminds us that we really need written procedural guidelines for AT services. And the second goes along with that, reminding that once written, they need to be broadly disseminated, and I would add widely used, in order to make a difference in your AT services. Number 3 reminds us that it's important to have written descriptions of the job requirements related to assistive technology, not just for those service providers who have AT as a large part of their responsibility, but also for special ed teachers and general education teachers to let them know that they do have a role in supporting students with disabilities who use AT. Number 4 suggests that we need to seek and hire personnel with the AT competencies that they need. And 5 takes a different turn. It talks about the fact that we need to include assistive technology in the technology planning and the budgeting process. 6, we need to provide ongoing learning opportunities about assistive technology, not only because assistive technology is not well understood among general educators, but also because it's a field where things change quickly. Finally, the last one just reminds us that we need to have some kind of a process to evaluate our overall AT services, not just how are we doing for one given child, but overall, how is our program doing? And I'll talk more about all of these. I want to think of some big ideas in the area of administrative support, and I've identified 4 of them. The first is that administrators have very distinct roles, and I will talk about those. Then the guidelines, when we have them, really bring consistency and improve quality. The third is that staff need to know that AT is part of their responsibility. It's very difficult if suddenly someone finds they have a child in their classroom and needs assistive technology services, and no one has ever mentioned to them that they would have a role in supporting that child's use of their AT. Finally, it's important to ask, how is our AT program doing? So let's talk about these. The distinct roles of administrators can really be grouped into 4 areas. They're leaders, they're managers, they're supervisors, and they are program developers. In their role as a leader, they may not realize they have a leadership role in the area of assistive technology, but they do. So they can either be intentional in their leadership or unintentional. When they're intentional, they recognize assistive technology and that what they say and do can have an impact on how it is regarded by others in their district or in their building. If you've ever been itinerant and traveled to different school districts and different school buildings, you'll know that each one is a unique culture and they vary greatly from one to the next. And it's often that building principal or that superintendent or that special ed director that sets that tone and helps develop that culture. So if a leader like a building principal doesn't know they have a role, they can inadvertently be turning teachers against AT. The building principal who says, well, assistive technology, what does that have to do with it? Makes the teachers think they don't need to know anything about assistive technology. But the building principal who says, oh, assistive technology is an important part of what we do, makes us all realize it's an important part of what we do. So it's critical that they understand that and that they provide the kind of leadership that's intentional in helping their staff support children who need assistive technology. In the role of managers, they have some real specific things to do, and one of them is making sure that AT is included in the budget. But the other is they control the agendas when they have in-service training, they control the agendas when they have staff meetings. So whether assistive technology is included in the topics of conversation is really part of that management role. I think another aspect of management is freeing up time for staff who need to attend a meeting about assistive technology. if you're providing an assistive technology assessment, it's really important to have that classroom teacher, whether it's a special ed teacher or a general ed teacher or both, be active participants in that process. And the building principal who says, I'll make sure John's there. If I can't find a sub for that day, I'll do it myself. Would it be possible for you to schedule it on a Tuesday afternoon, because I know I'm always in the building then? And then there's the building principal who says, well, I'm sorry, we don't have any sub money anymore. You'll just have to do it without him. It's a real difference in how they view their role as a manager and how they view assistive technology and its importance to the lives of their students. The third role is a supervisor. And in that role, again, the building principals, the special ed directors, all the ones that do the advertising of jobs, do the interviewing for jobs, and then provide the ongoing evaluation of staff, have an important opportunity to include assistive technology as part of what they do. Even in just the principal's walkthrough of the classroom. If she says to the 5th grade teacher, I think I saw that you have 2 kids in your class with AT in their IEP. Can you show me what they're doing? Let me tell you, word spreads when they do that, and people begin to realize that they have a responsibility for that student in their classroom. And it isn't just that AT specialist who's going to come in once a month who has a responsibility, but rather the classroom teacher has that ongoing daily responsibility to help ensure that the AT is being used appropriately and that she calls for help when it's not being used appropriately. Finally, as program developers, administrators have the opportunity to look at assistive technology and to make sure that it is improved and developed like any other program that they include, that they look for funding in the budget, and that they look for time, and they include it in ongoing in-service training opportunities. My second big idea is that guidelines are really critical. You know, they bring consistency and they improve quality. We have to ensure that we have some guidelines about AT services. I always say, you know, if I came to work in your district next Monday, how would I know what to do about assistive technology? How would I know if I see a student I think needs it and doesn't have it? How would I know what to do? Who would I ask for help? How would I make a referral? So it really needs to include all areas of AT service delivery, including consideration, referral, request for support, how to write it in the IEP, how to plan for implementation. It can include some forms that staff can use. It can include resource people and their contact information, but we really need guidelines so that we know what is expected of us and how we should carry out any tasks related to assistive technology. The third big idea is that staff really need to know that AT is part of their responsibility. It needs to be in position descriptions. It needs to be included in interview questions. What would you do if a student showed up in your classroom who needed text-to-speech to help him with his reading? Tell me about it. Tell me what you would do. It's a great interview question to be able to understand what people know or don't know and what they might need to learn if they're going to be a teacher in your district. It needs to be specifically part of your staff evaluation so that you ask general educators, special educators, what they do related to assistive technology. Not that they have to know everything about service provision. They certainly don't have to know the intricacies of every assistive technology device, but they have to know what their role is, and they have to know how to support the students in their classroom who use AT. And part of the general supervision is just, again, having it in the front of their awareness. I wouldn't expect that building principals know everything about assistive technology. What I do hope, because I've seen it in many, many, many building principals, is that they are aware of what a difference it can make for students, and they are aware that their teachers need to know that they are expected to support students in the use of that AT. And finally, as part of that, they really need to make sure there are ongoing learning opportunities for the staff, because we need to assume that a lot of staff do not understand assistive technology well and need to have some reminders, some training, some experience, and they also need to know what are the new things that are happening and how might they impact what you're doing with your children. So it's important that we really include it in our meetings, in our information that we share in our general newsletters, in our general start of the year, end of the year, that it's just part of our awareness as administrators of what we can do and how we can help support children with disabilities who use assistive technology. And finally, we have to ask, how is our AT program doing? You know, we get very focused on data about individual children and how they're doing with their AT, and that's critical. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but at some time we have to step back and look at how are we doing? Are the guidelines being followed? Are our guidelines sufficient? What kind of data can we collect about our AT program? Can we interview parents? Can we ask those classroom teachers who have students in their classes, how did the AT support help you? Did you need something more? Were you happy with it? But we can seek feedback from a broad audience of all the consumers that use our AT services in any way and find out what they need and how, whether we're meeting those needs. And then we can make database changes when we have that data to make our changes on. So I'd like to think about, what are your next steps after you watch this webinar? One is you really need to talk to each other. AT service providers, classroom teachers, building principals, special ed directors, we need to find out what we know and what we don't know. A really good thing to do is to complete the self-assessment matrix for administrative support and identify areas that may need your attention. Because it's a matrix, it has 5 variations in each answer, so you can usually find yourself in there somewhere, and you can locate the areas where you might need the most work. Review, or if you don't have them, develop some AT guidelines so that you have something to build on and work from. Evaluate your AT program on a regular basis. That might be yearly, or it might be every other year, depending on what your program evaluation looks like for other programs. But do something. Look at how it's going. Be intentional. And finally, investigate the AT resources can be useful to you, and I'm going to talk about a few right now. First, we have 3 resources that we've included with this module. The first is the Quiet Self-Evaluation Matrix for Administrative Support, and that's the one I just talked about. I strongly suggest that you complete it as a group and talk about your reactions to it, because you find sometimes very different perceptions depending on whether you're in an elementary school versus a middle school, or whether you're in a self-contained classroom versus you're itinerant. So look at everyone's input and see how that can help you. Secondly, read the quality indicators for administrative support. They include more than just the key points that I've talked about today, and I often find the intent statements and the common errors very helpful in getting a nice, well-rounded view of them. Finally, you can do the Administrative Planner for Effective Technology Supervision and Leadership. That's a tool that was developed in one of our Quiet Summits a few years ago and has some nice tips for building administrators as they are walking through their building and working with their staff. We've included also a handout with this that includes several resources with links to them. One is, I suggest you look at the Education Tech Points website. We have a wonderful database there of resources related to all aspects of assistive technology supervision. I'd like to recommend the book, Leading the Way to Excellence in AT Services. I wrote that with my colleague, Gail Bowser, and it is really aimed at building principles, and I think you would find useful information in there. I suggest you look at the AT Internet modules from the Ohio Center for Autism and Low Incidence, OCALI. There are 40 some of them, and they are very helpful, have lots of wonderful information about assistive technology. There is one aimed specifically at administrators, and you might want to start there. I strongly recommend the Texas AT Network's Making AT Services Sustainable. That was developed by Joan Breslin-Larson and Diana Carl, 2 of our Quality Indicators leadership team, and again, has some wonderful help for you. And then finally, if you do not have operating guidelines and would like to look at some model operating guidelines, the one from the Oregon Technology Access Program is something that I think you might find really helpful. I'd like to thank you for being with us today and recommend that you consider looking at the Quiet website at qiat.org. There's a variety of resources on there that can be very helpful to you, and it is also the place that you can become part of the quiet list. If you haven't done that, we have several thousand participants from around the world who post and answer questions about assistive technology, and I think you'll find it very useful. I'd also like to recommend the book that we wrote, The Quality Indicators for Assistive Technology. What I find in there that's so helpful are the huge number of examples. If you're a person who learns well from examples, please consider purchasing this book and read through those. They're just very, very helpful. And finally, if you have any questions based on this or just questions in general about assistive technology, please contact us at quietleadership@gmail.com, and we will be happy to get back to you. Thank you.